How's everybody doing today? It's Craig here again. Another segment of the Farmertec 372 parts kit build. When we assembled the crankcase, put the crank in it, done the centering of the crank, mounted it onto the tank handle. There was a couple things that I forgot to put on. So before we go any farther, we're going to tackle that today. This right here is the kill switch. This was not one of them. I've got it partly installed here, so it's pretty straightforward. You got like a little triangle hole. That's where I like to run it out of, and I believe that's even where it runs out of, supposedly, on the OEs. I always like to install my switch so that when I'm pushing it from this side to this side, I'm pushing it off. It just makes sense. I'm right here and I can actually pull it toward the handle easier than what I can push it away to kill it. This short wire will actually come up through the carburetor base and it will get grounded out to the mounting screw that goes through the base into the crankcase here. This one here, the longer one, will actually loop around and go to the coil, and then that'll make the complete circuit to kill it. So see how big of a pain in the butt this is going to be to put on. It's kind of cold out here today. Give me a little screwdriver here to help these tabs. There we go. So now that's on, and as I'm running it, if I have to, I can switch it off. On, and pushing that way is off. So now we'll get back to the pieces and parts I've got put in. This here is just nothing more than a little rubber bumper sleeve that goes for the limiter bolt that goes through the handle into the case. It'll actually go through this hole right here, and there's a pocket back in here that this will set in. It's a lot easier to put this in right now than what it is later. You'll have to kind of maneuver it into place here, get it set up right, and there you go. I know it's hard to see, but hopefully you can see the opening is sticking out now, so when I put this limiter screw through here, this will go right into that rubber. The other one I forgot was the bumper. Actually goes on this side, and it'll come through this hole right here, and this will actually keep the tank. It's another little rubber bumper for movement. So you just get it in place. Their needle nose, grab the little tip on the rubber bumper there and pull it until it snaps in. Just like that. Now that little rubber's in place. That's all of them that I forgot to do when we assembled the crankcase. The other ones that I've got here actually is going to be with this segment of it. So we've got a couple things here that we have to do with the carburetor base. So the carburetor base needs to be in place before you set the cylinder, because if it's not, it's really hard and sometimes almost impossible to get it in. I like to assemble the cylinder with the intake manifold attached to it, and if you do that, then this is impossible to get into place. If you don't put the intake on before, it's kind of hard. I mean, it can be done, but it's hard to get the intake and your clamp on it, because you're fighting the base plate here. You're fighting this lip right here. So This right here is for your throttle cable. As you're looking at the base plate, you got a hole that's in kind of an angled, and that's where this will go. Let me see. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to make sure I had it oriented right. So we'll take and we'll pull that into place. And you know what? I got it in backwards already. My bad. You want the tip coming up through, not down through. You'll have sawdust in underneath the carburetor in this base, and what you're doing is you'll pull the throttle cable up through there, and it'll make a seal around that cable, and it'll prevent some dust from getting down in, also from coming up through. This particular tank handle, the tank vent on it is different than the other ones I've built. The other ones had a little plastic insert in where the vent is, and then there was a hose that come up through and then attached to one of these two posts right here. This one just has what they call a sinter, S-I-N-T-E-R valve or filter. It looks like a brass mesh screen's what it looks like, and that's what's in this one. I don't know why they built this one different. Obvious reasons, who knows. So we don't have to worry about installing the hose that goes from the tank vent up through and attaches to one of these. The pulse line, I just had that and I don't see it. You know, make sure you put your pulse line on. Here, no, that's not it. Here it is. I don't know how it got clear back there. So this is the Farmertec pulse line. Obvious reasons, we don't like that. I even changed the original gas line that was in the tank to steel R3, and I think this will be fine. Yeah. So here's some more steel R3. I just buy it in bulk, you know, several foot at a time. You can use what comes with it, and I usually do use most everything that comes with it, but I do know that this is an issue. These hoses deteriorate pretty bad over time, and I don't want to have a potential issue if I can prevent it. So I've got the gas line and the pulse line changed out now. So before we mount the cylinder, I'm going to mount this base plate. So it's pretty straightforward how you do that. Make sure your sleeve for your throttle cable's all the way back. Make sure it works. And that's the phone ringing. An unknown number. So we're not even going to mess with that. So this isn't operating the way that I like it for. It acts like it's hanging up. So I'm not going to mess with that now. I'll take this apart in another video and we'll see what's wrong with it. You know, I've talked about what I was going to do with the cylinder because it's got 51,000 squish to it, which is excessive, and that's with a no base gasket build. I decided what I'd do is go ahead and build it like that. Put it together, we'll run it, we'll do some cuts with it, and then we'll tear it apart. I'll mill the base down to where I can get roughly 20 to 25 thousandths using the base gasket, and I'll do a little bit of port work to it, Nothing major, just cleaning stuff up, and put it back together, and we'll compare the before to the after just to see how she runs. So start off here, we'll run the throttle cable through. Bring the fuel line up through. Guess what? Wrong hole. I'm stuck there. Bring the pulse line up through. And guess what? We don't have to bring the pulse line up through. That stays down, or stays in behind. Make sure your kill wire is coming up through. Make sure you got enough of your throttle cable pushed back. I'm just going to seat in there. Your sheathing has to seat back into your trigger. And then just kind of set that home. Just like so. Here's our kill wire. And it's not in the right position. Kill wire needs to be up here. I'm grounding it right here. So this is where the kill wire is going to be, right here in this corner. It'll go right down into the crankcase and make our connection. And okay, I think everything's good there. One thing I forgot to do, carburetor support. So let's take this back out. This is nothing more. It goes in from the top like this. And again, you just grab the tits and pull them, snap them through. That's all there is to that. And while I've got it out, this is for the choke. So we're going ahead and we'll snap that in. That way it'll be done. Make sure you get your kill wire up there where it belongs. Okay. I've got way too much fuel line on here. I just wanted to make sure I had enough when I cut it. So we'll take our taps for the base plate. Again, I like to Loctite everything. A little bit of blue Loctite. Doesn't take a whole lot. 4 of them. With this last one going through the kill, the wire for the kill circuit. Again, just tighten these down. They don't need to be Paul Bunyan tight. Just good and snug is all these things need to be. I'm just running them down kind of loosely, snug right now. I mean, I'm not putting a whole lot on them. Okay. Try to hold this kill wire where it doesn't loop around. Okay. Like I said, something's wrong with this trigger. I don't like what's going on in there. So I'll take all that apart here in another video and we'll see what's wrong with it. Here's your pulse line, here's your fuel line, here's your throttle cable and your carburetor support. So now we're ready to put the piston onto the rod. Everybody's got their opinion on these circlips. Everybody thinks the ears are too long. Are they? Are they not? I'm not really sure. But I like to clip some of them off. I don't clip about half of it. There's some people that clip it all off. I don't go that far. There's what I wind up with. Let me get the other one for comparison. So you can see about how much I cut off. I cut about half of it off. I just use a pair of side cuts. That's all I use. Again, there's the other one. Here's the wrist pin bearing for the small end of the rod. We'll go ahead and put it in place now. Make sure you get the piston on in the correct orientation. So there's the arrow, but I don't rely on that because I have seen arrows on the wrong side of the piston before. What I like to rely on is the locating pins. They always go to the intake side, never to the exhaust. So I'm going to be working from the PTO side of the saw when I put this piston on. So I want the pin to be able to slide out from this side. So I'm going to install my first ring circlip on this side. For this I just use a small pair of needle nose pliers. And I'll get it started in there. And get it worked around, and hopefully I don't lose this thing. It's hard to show this, but I've partially got it in right now. A little side of it's out. So I'll grab this and I'll just kind of twist it. And I don't know if you heard that, but it snapped in partially. I hope you can see that. That circlip is not seated all the way around. This side right here is up out of the groove. I hope you can see that. So make sure that circlip is seated all the way around, otherwise you're going to lose a piston and cylinder. So now she's all the way in, seated properly all the way around. If you noticed, I got the little tab on the bottom side of the piston. Some people say that's where it needs to be. Other people say it needs to be on the top. They say, you know, the piston going up and down. Well, if you think about it, if it's going up and it's on the top, it's going to be forced down. If it's on the bottom and it's going down, it's going to be forced up through inertia. You know, make your own judgment. I like the bottom because I think the heavier of the mass will eventually work its way to the bottom, and that's where it's going to wind up anyway. Just my opinion. So now, take a little 3-in-1 oil. I'm going to put just a smidget of oil inside each pin boss. Not a whole lot. Run that pin through there. Get the piston down on the rod in the proper orientation. And get it home. There we go. Get this thing turned around. There's the ring. That's the rubber bumper for the top of the piston, or not piston, but cylinder. So at this point we'll go to our other little circlip. And this is where it gets fun. Grab a hold of it. I like to take and put the loose end, the tail, I like to put it in first. Get it up in there and then just kind of twist and push all at the same time. Keep your thumb on it so it doesn't go somewhere. Your finger if need be. Okay, you heard it snap, I hope. So we're going to look at it. And it's seated, totally seated in the little groove. And I'm going to move the tab to the bottom. Don't know if you'll be able to see that. I hope you can see that, but we're seated. Okay. So now, get the piston to bottom dead center. Take the ring. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. See the end gaps of the ring there? You got two little offsets. Them offsets are for the pin. So you got to figure out where your pin is, which on this one, the pin is in the top. So this ring has to sit on the piston just the way I'm holding it, because them two little offsets go underneath that pin, and that's what holds this ring in place to keep it from spinning on the piston. Pretty simple to put on. Go easy, don't break it. Get one end started into the groove, then just kind of work it around and work it right on. Simple as that. Okay. So now we're ready to set the cylinder. Since I'm not using a gasket, I'm going to use Farmertec's Moto Seal. I know you can't read it, but it's gray. Before I do that, I almost forgot. Let's put the intake manifold on it. The intake, well, let me take back up here. The intake has two little tits on it, and there's two little perches on the cylinder on either side of the intake, and that's where them go. Yeah, this isn't, they didn't make this very good. Let me pause this right here. I got a burr right here in here that I didn't see earlier. So let me take that burr out of, well, here. That'll be easy enough, just a file. I'll go clear around it just to make sure. Okay, we're done. That's good. So now I'm just going to blow it out, and I'm going to film that. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So now we can go to getting this mounted up. You got to make sure this is square, because your carburetor mounts here, and if your manifold's not square to the cylinder, then it's going to throw everything off. So what I do, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's a parting line here on the top of the manifold where it was molded. I just run it right back with the parting line here on the cylinder, which is in the center of the cylinder, so that puts it straight up and down. Looks like everything's parallel now. I guess I should have put the clamp on first. So we'll do that again. The head of the screw for the clamp comes to the on-off switch side of the cylinder, and it goes to the top. So we'll put this back on one more time. Square this thing back up. Make sure the boot's all the way on. Make sure the clamp is square. This clamp here is hitting the fin. And when I pull that together, when I tighten that up, I doubt if it gets any better. So I'm going to rotate that clamp just a bit to avoid hitting the fins. Looks like we need to roll that just a bit. Okay, it looks like it's pretty good. So when you tighten this down, you don't have to, again, you don't have to go Paul Bunyan tight on it. It just needs to be good and snug. There is a measurement between the ends of the tabs, the insides of the tabs. Without looking it up, I don't know what it is, but this is how I've always done it. You can go too tight. You can actually break it. Make sure your seated down into the intake boot all the way, which I'm not. The top of it's not down in the ring. Let's loosen it up a little bit more here. There we go. That looks good there. Looks good all the way around now. Good and snug is all you got to do. And I'm going to take this ring off. I want to check something here real fast. I want to be able to set the cylinder easy, that's why I'm taking it off. Well, I think what's going to happen, I think that clamp's going to hit. I'm messing around here with the pulse line, so I'll just get it up out of the way here. Okay, we've got some issues going on. Cylinder's not going down square, it's going down like this. It's hitting the rubber intake boot. So I'm going to have to take the boot off and see what's going on there. We'll be back once I figure it out. Well, okay guys, so the issue, it appears that this base plate, this air dam part right here, where the bottom of the intake boot seals against, appears like it's too high. It's holding it up 3/16 of an inch maybe a little more. At first I thought it might have been hitting the pulse nipple. It's not hitting there. If I take the intake boot off, it sets down perfect like it's supposed to, and you can see what's going on here. Even if it had a gasket, I don't think the gasket would make that much difference, because the gasket's only, you know, like 15 or 20 thousandths thick. That's definitely more than 15 or 20 thousandths. If you set this down in there where it should be, you know, it sets down. But see here, I don't know if you can see this. See how much higher the intake boot is versus the top of the air dam there? And that's just about what I'm having as far as interference. So I guess I got to decide. I'm just going to take a file and I'm going to file some of that out of there. And I'm not going to do that on film. That'll take too long. So once I get this filed out and I get it to where it's the proper height, we'll come back and we'll pick back up. Okay, we're back. So what I had to do was take a file and file this down a little bit. Evidently, when they injected molded this, their form must have been off or wore out or something. But you can see what I've done there. I've actually beveled it a little bit, and I've taken and cut it down, and I've got plenty of room. What it was doing, it was hanging up right here on the bottom on this side and right around the bottom on this lip. Yeah, that's where it was hanging up. I've never had one do that, but you know, these are clones of parts, or of saws rather. It's supposed to be exact, but if you've ever put one together, you know for a fact that these things are not exact. You'll run into all kinds of issues. So that's today's issue. So let's go ahead and put this thing together, get the cylinder set. Okay, since I had these in and took them out, I'm not sure if the Loctite had time to set up or not, the thread locker, but a little more never hurt. I'm not using a whole lot on it anyway, just enough to hold them in place, try to prevent them from backing out. Go down through the kill wire. And again, like before, I'm just going to kind of run them down a little snug. Keep them in the right spot there. Now here I'll just snug them down. Again, like I said, you don't need to be Paul Bunyan here. It's just plastic. Get a little screwdriver, hold that wire end in place. Okay. Fuel line, throttle cable, carb mount. I've actually got the intake manifolds mounted up, and I did get this, it just does clear. I've got the impulse tube there, so I'll get the impulse, well actually first, before we do that, I might wait and put this on after I set the cylinder. Probably be a lot easier. So get the piston bottom dead center. Set this back. Put the cap back on her. I'm not too worried about this setting up really fast. It's not hot out, it's cold. I'm just going to go around this cylinder. Try to spread it out equally, and tap it as I go. I did clean these with brake clean and blowed them dry prior to coming back. At one point I even thought it was the cylinder that might have been messed up. So I got the 49mm cylinder out and tried it and had the exact same issue with it hanging. So we've got a good coat clear around it. I'm going to do the same thing to the crankcase here. I'm going to go around the crankcase. Let's turn you around here where you can see what's going on here. Like I said, you don't need a whole lot. Just work your way around it. Some of the models where the impulse comes through the cylinder, you got to make sure that you keep the hole open for your impulse signal. Looks good to me. Like I said, I'm not in no big hurry. I'm not worried about this stuff setting up really fast. In the summertime when it's warm, I kind of worry about it, setting up too fast. But now I got the luxury of it being cold, so it's not going to set up that fast. Okay, so now I'm going to bring the piston all the way to top dead center. Going to take a little bit of oil, just run some of this 3-in-1 oil right down on the ring. Coat the skirts of the cylinder, or of the piston. Work that ring back and forth, get some of that oil down in there. And then I'm just going to take it back down to bottom dead center. Make sure that my end gap is on the pin. I'll lay just a little bit of oil down in the cylinder now. I guess I ought to readjust you guys so you can see what's going on. Put a little bit of oil down in this cylinder now. Not a whole lot. And just take your finger. All you're doing is just looking for a light coating of oil in there is all you're looking for. It doesn't need to be dripping wet. Okay, I'm going to wait and put this pulse line on after I get the cylinder set. So now, ring compressor. I like to have it just a little bit below the bottom or below the top of the piston. I've got it started now, so I can take and run this up. Try not to drop the ring compressor. I did. So go back and touch up where you messed it up. I got a little bit dab running down right there, so we'll get rid of that. So now I'll run the piston back down, bottom dead center, and just shove the cylinder home. There we go. Can I get that? Yeah, I can get that with my 40 or my 90-degree needle nose. So before this stuff dries, let's wipe it off of here. That's good for now. A little bit of Loctite on these bolts, taps, screws, whatever you want to call them. A couple of them you can just drop from the top, 2 on the muffler side, the 2 on the back side on the carburetor. You can actually get in there and drop them from the base. I'll run these down to where they just do touch. No pressure on them at all. And I'll explain that here in just a second as to why that's how I do it. Okay, they're just touching. So what I like to do now is run the piston to the top dead center. Now the cylinder vertically is square, side to side, front to back, to the piston when it's at top dead center. With the piston at bottom dead center, it may not be like that. So I like to run it up and do that, and then I'll put a little torque on these things, not much. I'll run them down to where they start to get a little tight to turn. And then I'll do the same thing, but this time I'm going to run it up and down a couple times. What I'm doing is I'm checking for drag and make sure there's no drag, make sure it's got the same resistance through the full stroke. So now I've got the piston at bottom dead center. I'll go ahead and I'll torque these bolts down, and the piston or the cylinder should be set at this point. I'll go around and I'll do a couple different sequences on it. Come on, there we go. There is a torque value to these. I'd have to look in the service manual. I'm not sure what it is, but my issue is I don't have a 1/4 inch drive Allen wrench long enough with a 3/8 drive adapter to use my torque wrench or my Newton meter wrench. So I just put them in here and I put substantial torque to them. Way more than what it's probably going to be OE. If I had to guess, I'd say I'm probably putting 30 to 40 foot-pounds of torque on these things. Be careful not to twist them off or round them out. Come on, get in there. Remember, these are Chinese, so they've got softer metal than what American is. Okay. Now this other little bumper right here. That prevents the cylinder cover from coming down and touching the cylinder and getting melted. I'm looking. I've got good squish out all the way around. So there we go. So let's just check the squish on it here real fast, just to see what we do have. I'll cut the old off, make a new bend. And there it's up against the side of the cylinder. That's all I've got. Let's turn you up here a little bit. I'll put the flywheel on here to help me turn it over. Okay, we got us a reading of some sort. I believe this was 63 thousandths. Yeah, this is 63 thousandths on the solder. Zeroed out, I've got it on thousandths of an inch. Let's see what we got. I've got it marked 51 thousandths right here. Don't know if you can see that, but it says 52. So we've picked up a thousandth of an inch with this moto seal. So that gives us 1 thou clearance. So when we mill this, I'll keep that in mind. Okay. That is what's involved in setting a cylinder. That's how I set cylinders. We'll let this set for a couple days, let it cure up. Like I said, it is kind of chilly, so I want it to have the best chance that it's got to cure fully before I go to doing anything. But we'll come back and we'll do another segment. Hope you all enjoyed. Catch you in the next one.